It was already dark outside, and the ancient buildings and perfectly landscaped grounds were taking on an eerie air. Despite this, Harriet couldn't think of anywhere she'd rather be, or anyone she'd rather be with, even if she was struggling to understand why he singled her out.
Have you seen the old library?
He asked.
It tends to be deserted.
No, I haven't. Show me. Tom took her hand, causing her heart to beat faster than ever, and led her to a small stone staircase built into part of the college's internal wall. He pulled out a decorated key and opened a heavy wooden door at the top. It's very dark in here.
Are you reading? Shall I turn on the lights, or do you prefer it that way? No, I'm just doing the voices.
We're not reading the threads.
You're not reading the sides, but then you have to still holding her hand tightly.
We can share that.
No.
I can't. I rather like.
No.
This video's hilarious. I'm going to put this one up as it is. Go on.
I rather like the dark in this sort of situation, at least.
Harriet giggled, but insisted on some lighting. Tom let go of her while he flicked the switch. It lit up one bulb high in the roof, allowing Harriet to see the room, but doing little to expel its gloom. She glanced around, seeing a beamed roof, deep windows, and row after row of ancient leather-covered books. "This is amazing," Harriet whispered. "Are we actually allowed to read these?" She hoped he wouldn't find her excitement too geeky. At school she'd learnt to hide her love of books, but if she couldn't flaunt it at Oxford, where could she? To her relief, Tom replied with equal enthusiasm.
Mostly the first editions, and some are almost priceless. But yes, you can read them, as long as you're careful. You just can't take them out of the room.
He walked over to one of the shelves and delicately lifted down one of the tomes.
This is an original copy of Don Juan. Do you like Byron?
Harriet dashed to his side. "Like him? I love him. It's probably an overly conventional choice of favourite poet, but he's definitely in my top 3.
I entirely agree,
Tom said with a smile. Harriet reached up to touch the book, but Tom lifted it out of her reach, opened it at random, and began to read. She'd expected him to choose a romantic line, which would have been welcome but predictable. Instead, to Harriet's fascination, he selected a political section.
You are the best of cutthroats, do not start. The phrase is Shakespeare's, but not misapplied.
His voice was smooth and enchanting, his delivery flawless. She felt she could happily listen to him read the entire poem, all thousands of lines of it.
War's a brain-splattering, windpipe-slitting art, unless her cause by right be sanctified. If you have acted at once a generous part, the world's not the wo-
Go on.
If you have acted once a generous part, the world, not the world's masters, will decide.
Tom looked at her expectantly. Harriet took a deep breath, thanked her lucky stars that she had a good memory for poetry and hadn't been bluffing about her love of Byron, and recited the rest of the stanza. "And I shall be delighted to learn who, save you and yours, have gained by Waterloo." She looked up at Tom triumphantly. Harriet rewarded her with an impressed and slightly surprised smile. She seemed to have passed some sort of test in his eyes. "I always find that section fascinating," Harriet said. "People think anti-war poetry is a 1960s thing. It always amuses me that Byron was writing it in the early 1800s. She felt a little thrill at being able to comment out loud. Normally this was the sort of interesting thought that would stagnate in her brain, unable to be shared with anyone. Maybe with Tom she could talk about history and literature and politics, and have her views challenged and reinforced in equal measure. Tom slid the book back into its place, and Harriet snapped back to reality. What was going on? Surely this beautiful boy hadn't really taken her to a deserted library to show off the college's rare book collection. Sure enough, Tom moved to stand behind her, and began to stroke her neck gently. His oddly forward behaviour caught Harriet off guard, but his touch felt wonderful. She smiled up at him, wondering whether, if he didn't lean over and kiss her within the next few moments, she'd have the guts to take the initiative herself. She'd had no trouble initiating proceedings with the few boys in school that she'd been vaguely interested in, but Tom was different. She felt as dizzy as the time she'd done a charity skydive and first looked out of the plane and down into a cloud. Eventually, he did kiss her, stroking her hair and drawing her to him. As their lips touched, everything felt perfect. Harriet lost any sense of being in the room. She was only aware of Tom. His soft hands slipped under the collar of her polo-necked jumper. As his fingers found the necklace she always wore, he froze.
Leave it there. It's enough.